Fresh Oil. We're so glad, Fresh Oil Virtual Church, that you guys tuned in to be with us this evening as we're beginning to start this brand new series. In part one of the series, it is simply entitled The Impossible Possible. Once again, think about that, the impossible possible. And we're going to look at the story in the Gospel of John, chapter 11. And we're going to look at verse number 1. And John starts off the writing. He says, "Now a certain man was sick, named Lazarus, of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. Then Jesus heard that he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Now Jesus listened, loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When he had heard, therefore, there he was sick, he abode, he stayed 2 days still in the same place where he was." Verse 32. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother had not died. And then verse 34, and Jesus speaking, and he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Verse 38. Jesus, therefore, again groaning in himself, comes to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Jesus said, Take you away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time he stinks, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Said I not unto you that if you would believe, you should see the glory of the Lord, or see the glory of God. And then verse 43. And when he had thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes. Series, The Impossible Possible. Let's look at this word impossible, because we hear it thrown around so many different ways and so many different things. And it simply means incapable of being or of occurring. Or another explanation means not capable of being done or happening. And this is something that you need to be able to understand in your daily struggles, the things that you are presently going through. You need to see that God sees your impossible as an invitation to do things through you that are beyond your control. I'm going to say that again. The situations that you may find yourself in, the circumstance, this drama that everybody has deemed impossible for it to be reversed in your life. You need to understand that it is an invitation, meaning that God is going to do some things through you that are out of your control or beyond your control. Your state that is called impossible is going to be God's some glory. Pause there for a moment and look at the thing that you're dealing with right now that seems to be so impossible. Whether it's your health, whether it's your finances, whether it's relationships, whether it has something to do with your career, whether it's something that's going on in your community, whether it's something that's going on in your family, your state that is called impossible is going to bring God glory. And so it tells us in this story, now a certain man was sick. He had something was wrong with him physically, named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. And then it goes on to let us know that the Lord had a love for Martha, her sister Mary, and love for Lazarus. And let's look at this name Lazarus, because I said names mean something. Lazarus This is what you need to understand about Lazarus. His heart and name is in covenant with Jesus. And the name Lazarus itself means, listen to this, God has helped. That's past tense and past experiences. So that is something that you and I should be able to understand, that regardless of whatever situation that we may have been in, we've had some experiences with God where God has helped us past tense, and we have some past experiences that God is a helper. And this is something that you and I need to understand, that you may be saved and filled with the Holy Ghost, but understand you will come under attack from inside and outside forces. Some things will happen internally, and then some things will happen externally. And just because you are saved, it will not exclude you from experiencing some drama in your life. And this is something that you need to understand. It said that Lazarus was sick. And sometimes in life, life's issues will make your peace sick. That you can be whole one moment. You can be feeling complete one moment. And then all of a sudden, life's issues will make your peace sick. And then sometimes even life itself, listen to this, will even make your faith sick at times. And when we look at this word sick in Greek, it simply means to be feeble, to be weak or afflicted. Sometimes situations will make your joy sick. And we already determined that sick means feeble and weak. Sometimes circumstances, whether broken relationships, whether death in the family, whether the death in a career. Sometimes circumstances will even make your heart sick. But Jesus heals the broken and hearted, and he bandages up their wounds. Sometimes your physical health will get sick. You can eat properly. You can exercise properly. You can get the proper rest. You don't stress. You don't put any unclean things in your body. But sometimes your physical health itself, it will get sick. But when these things are occurring, this is something that you and I need to understand. Don't worry that you got denied health insurance because of pre-existing medical conditions. Don't worry if they freeze federal funding for Medicare or Medicaid. Because this is what God had told the children of Israel. He says, for I am the Lord that heals you. Not Blue Shield or Blue Cross. But I'm the Lord, I'm Jehovah Rapha that heals you. Hashtag, if you can have it, he can heal it. And now, so Lazarus is dealing with a situation. He has a sickness. It's out of his control. And now in verse 3, about his sickness, it says, therefore his sisters, he's talking about Mary and Martha. Therefore his sisters sent to him, talking about Jesus, saying, Lord, behold, take notice, he whom you love is sick. Now Mary and Martha, they're sending a message to Jesus. And they're saying, Jesus, Lazarus, the one that you love, the one that you're in covenant with, he has a sickness. And this is what you and I need to be able to understand. When you're going through, it's good to have someone to intercede on your behalf. It's a blessing when you've lost your voice to have someone else who will use their voice to speak up on your behalf. It's a blessing when you can no longer fight, just in this, but those around you that will fight for you. It's good to be in covenant. And what does covenant mean? Covenant simply means I got you and you got me. And so they sent a word to the Lord about their brother saying he has a sickness and the doctor can't do anything about He has a sickness and there's nothing that we can do about it. The medication is not working. We've been praying, but his situation is still the same. And this is something that the Bible also tells us when you're going through why it's so good to have somebody that'll be in covenant with you, that somebody who will fight for you when you can't fight for yourself. That someone who will speak up on your behalf when you can't speak on your behalf because you have become so weak because of the condition that you may be in, whether it may be physical, whether it may be emotional, whether it may be mental, whether it may be financial. The Bible says, better a neighbor nearby than a relative far away. And so now what has taken place? The impossible is now knocking on the door. Because after they send a word to Jesus, and Jesus hears this word, Jesus tells the disciples that's with him that this sickness is not unto death, but unto the glory of God. And in the midst of this time, Lazarus messes around, and Lazarus dies. He does not fall unconscious. He's not in a coma, but he actually dies. And now this brings us to verse 32. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother had not died. He's dead. And this is something that you need to understand. That when Jesus heard about his condition, he purposely delayed his coming. And you need to understand that sometimes that when you and I are in situations and it seems like it's a life-threatening situation, I need you to understand that sometimes the Lord does not hurry. I need you to understand that his delay is not a denial. I need you to understand when he delays, he has not forgotten about you. I need you to understand that when he delays, he's not leaving you to himself or leaving you to defend for yourself. There's always a reasoning in his delay. And this is what you need to understand, because Mary made it very clear to Jesus. She said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And this is something that you need to understand about sometimes some of the situations that you and I are going through. Listen, as long as your condition has a pulse, it signifies that something is still alive. I'm going to say that again. As long as your condition has a pulse, has a heartbeat, it signifies that something is still alive. As long as your situation has breath, it means it still has life. Hashtag, the possible is connected to the impossible. And she's telling Jesus, my brother is dead and now he is in a state that is called impossible to be reversed. And this is something that you need to be able to understand, and that Jesus is never late. The Bible tells us after he heard this news, he still abode where he was in that place for 2 more days. Need you to understand, when your cry goes out about your condition, need you to understand that the Lord heard you. We get that confirmation out of the book of Daniel, when Daniel had fasted for those 21 days and hadn't heard a word. And when the angel finally brought him the word, the angel told him, from the first time that you opened your mouth, God heard you. But I had been held up by the prince of Persia. And then when the angel Michael came, and Michael overpowered, and I was released to come and bring this word to you. The Bible says, listen to this, call unto me and I will answer you. In Isaiah 65 and 24, God says, and it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer. And while they're yet speaking, I will hear. So you need to understand, regardless of whatever your situation may be in, regardless if your situation no longer has a pulse, regardless, there's no more heartbeat in your situation. Regardless, nothing else is breathing. Regardless of people are trying to pronounce your situation, your condition, trying to pronounce it as being something dead. This is what you need to understand. Understand that Jesus is never late. He's always on time. What do you mean? Sometimes he doesn't show up until the chemo treatment is not having any effects on the cancer any longer. Sometimes he doesn't show up until the dialysis is no longer making the kidneys function properly. Doesn't show up until your body doesn't respond to the medications any longer. Doesn't show up until the doctor says we've done all that we can do. We'll recommend hospice care. Sometimes he doesn't show up until it seems like the family is getting ready to split. Sometimes he doesn't show up until, listen, an eviction notice is getting ready to be presented. Sometimes he doesn't show up until the repo man is about to latch up to your car. But you need to understand that he's always on time. Hashtag, the benediction confirms you have a future. The benediction, they said that you're done. The benediction, your life is over. But that benediction confirms that you have a future. And God says this, because he's heard what Mary has said. That, Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. Lord, if you would have been here, you could have reversed this condition. Lord, if you would have been here, you could have turned around the situation. But the benediction confirms not an ending, but it confirms that you do have a future. When God spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, he says, listen, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Listen to this very carefully. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Lord, this wouldn't be the end of his story. Listen carefully. People have said your vision and your dream is dead. You shared your vision, but it hasn't come to pass, so people said it's dead. You've been dreaming and dreaming and dreaming, and it still has not yet become a reality, and people have been speaking over your vision and speaking over your dream, trying to cause you to believe their opinion. And they said that it's dead. Family and friends said, listen, that your relationships or your marriages are dead. They said the opportunities for better is dead. Listen to this, because of your age. Either you're too young, either you're too old, either you're underqualified or you're overqualified. But your opportunities, they're dead. They go on a little further and say, your race, your color, your gender, and your culture. Said dead, listen, they said dead men don't climb the corporate ladder to the CEO position. But there's something that you need to understand right here in this text right here. Where she is pouring out her heart to Jesus because she's looking at an impossible situation. She's in her heart, she sees an ending. In her heart, she sees the conclusion of a brother's story. But now in verse 34, Jesus says, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Listen to this. Hashtag, Jesus talks about the living, not the dead. His sister is talking about the dead. His sister is talking about your condition. She's talking about your circumstances. She's talking about your what was. But Jesus is still talking about the living. So now we ask this, are you ready for this? Jesus is actually telling her, where is the impossible? Show me where the impossible place is. Show me where that impossible place is that's in your life. And Jesus, verse 38, Jesus therefore, again groaning in himself, comes to the grave, comes to the tomb. And it was a cave, and the stone was laid upon it, or a stone was laid against it. It's the impossible things in your life that gets the Lord's attention. Pause for a moment. Look at the thing that you've been dealing with. And it just seems like it's so impossible. Seems like it's unchanging. Seems like there's nothing that you can do about it. It's the impossible things in your life that gets the Lord's attention. It's when people have thrown dirt over you and your name. That's what gets his attention. Because see, when they throw dirt over you, listen, when they're throwing dirt over you, they're positioning you to be called the memory. When they're throwing dirt over you, you only throw dirt over dead things. You only throw dirt over things that can't bounce back. You only throw dirt over things that can't add to a future. So when people throw dirt over you, when people now look at you as a past, part of history, that's what gets Jesus' attention. And it says, he came to the tomb, it was open the cave, and then there was a stone pressed up against it. It's when people place an obstacle before you to try and keep you hidden. That's what draws Jesus' attention. You need to understand that sometimes the enemy will try to place things in front of you to try to keep you hidden, to try to keep you out of sight. Those are the things that will get the Lord's attention. God will use the death of a thing to bring him some glory. Some things got to die in your life to bring him some glory. Some relationships, they have to die in your life. Some ideologies have to die in your life. Some conversations, some patterns of thinking, they have to die in your life to bring God some glory. And now he says to you and I, as he's looking at this situation, as he's looking at our condition, and he reinforces us with this, listen, no weapon that is formed against you shall prosper. Listen, even death can prosper. Where you presently are in life is not a mistake. I don't care what your dream seems like it's not going to live. Your finances seem like they're not going to live. Your relationships seem like they're not going to live. Your career seems like it's not going to live. But you need to understand where you are in life right now. You haven't done anything wrong. It's not a mistake. You're in the right place at the right time. And this is what you and I need to understand. You've been purposely planted in the place of the impossible. Whatever you're going through, that tough time, that drama, those trials, those tribulations, you've been purposely. The devil didn't do this. You've been purposely. Not life and its issues. Not you and maybe some misadvised decisions. But you've been purposely. The hand of God has been on you purposely in his divine will. Planted in the place of the impossible. And understand that anything that's planted is authorized and is connected to the natures of law or the laws of nature. Anything planted has to produce a harvest. And since you've been planted in this place, planted in this soil of the impossible, your condition will confirm what is impossible with men is possible with God. So now we're looking in this situation now, the place of the impossible. After Mary tells Jesus, Jesus, if you had not been here, or you had been here, my brother would have not died. And Jesus never even spoke to the dead. He always speaks to the living. He simply says, where did you lay him? And then when he gets to the tomb, he's placed in a place where the dead is laid. He's placed in a place called impossible. And then they try to hide him and bury him in that place. And now Jesus has this conversation. He says, take you away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time he stinks, for he been dead 4 days. Let's deal with this situation. Jesus, take away the stone. I want to see the place that's impossible. Listen, I want to see, that situation that you're dealing with, a Lady Vernon, they said this is impossible. John, I know that they gave up on you. I know they said they couldn't find a pulse in your condition. I want to see the impossible. Listen to what he says. So I need you to get this in your mindset in Israel. Been blessed to be there on numerous occasions. Need you to understand that he has died. He has not been embalmed. I need you to understand the climate that they're in. Depending on prior to the Passover, the climate weather has probably been heated. Need you to understand he's been placed in a cave, not in the morgue. He's been dead 4 days now. Impossible. Teach for a moment. Well, Pastor, I need you to understand that when they sent word to Jesus, he stayed where he was at 2 days. And then after those 2 days, then he came. Now, it was believed in that culture at that time when someone passed, someone could be dead for 3 days. But they believed within 3 days the spirit could then come back into the person and the person could be revived. But Jesus waited 4 days to make sure what he was getting ready to do, that it couldn't be contradicted. So, Pastor, what are you trying to tell us? That sometimes the Lord will say it just a little bit longer because he wants to make sure that you're dead. So that when he steps into that situation, everybody will know that God did this thing. So now he's in an oven. That's what he's really in. Instead of a tomb. because he's in the cave and they have the door closed. And Martha says, Lord, you want us to remove this blockage? Because that impossible thing in there stinks. I just said something. That impossible thing in your life stinks. Are you sure you want me to remove this stone? Dead, dead. Let's look at the word dead in Greek. It means lifeless. We're not just talking about a body. We're talking about your life. We're talking about your situations. We're talking about your condition. We're talking about the things that you're personally going through. Whether they may be financial, that's what we're talking about. Whether some mental torment or emotional struggles that's what we're talking about. We're talking about relationships. They don't have to be romantic. They could be work related. They could be family. We're talking about that. Talking about your physical health. We're talking about your spiritual health. And it means lifeless. It also means what lacks life. There's no evidence of life. Not able to respond to impulses or perform functions. It says powerless, dead. Unresponsive to life-giving opportunities. Hashtag, dead means dead. And Martha is very precise about this condition. He's dead. That means it's impossible for that situation to be reversed. He's dead. It is over with. He's dead. That's past tense of having anything that was living or functioning. Listen carefully now. People may say your ideas are dead. But Jesus never said they were. She said he was dead. Jesus never mentioned his death. Your past may say your future opportunities are dead. But Jesus never said that. Your present state may say your dating life is dead. But he never said that. What they call dead doesn't mean an ending. Listen, it signals a new beginning. What people are calling dead in your life, it is not dead. It is really the introduction of a new season or new beginning that's getting ready to take a part or a place in your life. Now let's dive into the impossible. Let's go a little bit deeper in there. Because Martha wants to talk about an impossible situation. And see, when your mind is made up on something impossible, you never think about a different outcome. When you're looking at something that is impossible, you never see a breakthrough. Prove it. Martha, the sister, listen, that was dead. Said to him, Lord, by this time he stinks. Listen, for he been dead 4 days. See, the impossible will always have you looking at a situation, considering it to be hopeless, considering it to be over, and considering it to be dead, and considering it to have no benefit. Let's look at this thing, and this is what she was talking about. Because she was looking at the situation from a human perspective. Decomposition begins, listen, a few minutes after death, after human death, with a process called allotosis. That's the destruction of cells and tissues by their own enzymes. See, Lord, he's stinking now. This thing is impossible. The brain is the first organ to begin this process. Maggots can appear within hours and lay eggs in natural openings and then feed on the soft tissues of the body. But understand, when people talk about your ending, Jesus sees your beginning. Where they did your benediction, where they said their last rites over you, where they threw the dirt over you, where they walked away from you, where they believed that you were, listen, where you were buried. Jesus says, listen, your latter shall be greater than your beginning. When they closed the book and said, your story is over, Jesus says, he's going to write a new chapter in your life. Behold, I'll do a new thing, and now shall it spring forth. Where they planted, listen very carefully, where they planted you, not buried you. And you just think about this very quickly. Because one is impossible, another one is possible. Where they planted you, not buried you. And there's a big difference between the two. Well, Pastor, what is the big difference? Understand, listen. You only bury dead things because they're connected to a past. You only bury dead things because they're connected, listen to this, because they're connected to a yesterday's memory. But you plant things because their connection is to a future. Hashtag planted, not buried. Understand what your life has been through serves a divine purpose. The pain that your heart and life has experienced, it serves a purpose because it's going to bring God glory. Your constant struggle with sickness in your health, it serves a purpose because it's going to show that God is stronger than your sickness, and he's stronger than your sorrow. He's stronger than your pain. Jesus heard them diagnosing your condition. He heard them pronounce you dead on arrival. But this is what Jesus said about your situation, about your condition. Regardless if it's spiritual, regardless if it's natural, regardless if it's emotional. Jesus said, this sickness, he's talking about your present condition. He's talking about your present situation. Is not to death, but for the glory of God. Your impossible has to answer God's question. Understand this. Your teen pregnancy said chances of getting a college degree is dead. Your criminal record said that your chances of getting your dream job is also dead. Your zip code and lack of funding for skilled jobs said you'll die in poverty. But understand, the impossible still has to answer God's question. And according to Jeremiah, this was what God said. He says, behold, take notice, behold, look, I am the Lord. I am Yahweh. I am Jehovah. I am the self-existent eternal one. The God of all flesh. He asked him, is there anything too hard for me? And now, as they look at what this thing is called impossible, they're looking at the impossible when Jesus already knows the possible. And as he had them roll back the stone, Jesus began to have this conversation with the Father so that they could all hear. And this is what he said. Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eye. Did you notice something? Everyone is saying that you're dead. But Jesus never mentions anything about a death. I'm going to say that again. From the introduction of the story, after Jesus delayed his steps, the first thing that the sister introduced to him, if you had been here, my brother would have died. Jesus didn't talk to his death because she was impossible. Jesus said, I don't talk to the impossible. I always talk at the possible. Where did you lay him? Where did they took him to a place where you bury dead things. But Jesus didn't come to look at a dead thing. He came to look at something that was possible. Mm-hmm. Then when he got there, he says, now roll away the stone. Her response was, the impossible, the dead, has been here 4 days. Roll away the stone. The dead has been here 4 days, and by now, Lord, he sure enough stinks. The impossible stinks, Lord. Jesus is not concerned about the smell of the impossible when he knows what the possible smells like. Good God Almighty. Now he has this dialogue. Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. And I knew that you heard or you hear me always, but because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that you have sent me. And when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes. They kept calling him dead. The situation looked like it was dead. The situation looked like it was impossible. And you need to understand that sometimes you might be in a situation and your situation looks like it's dead. It looks like it's impossible. Why? Because what you are going through, no one else in your family ever went through what you're going through right now. No one has ever experienced what you have experienced. No one has ever recovered from what you're going through. And this is all you need. Listen, all you need is the word from the Lord. That lifeless dream seems like it has no power. Seems like it has no impulse. Seems like it can't grasp onto any type of opportunity presented to it. But all it needs is just a word from the Lord. That unresponsive answer that you've been waiting on. The opportunities that look more like corpse. Your situation that has no pulse or no sign of life. All you need is a word from the Lord. Understand, the impossible will become possible. What couldn't be done will be done. Sometimes God will allow you to go under. It is not by an accident. It is not by a coincidence. Satan doesn't get any credit for this. But it is God that sometimes he will allow you to go under so that he can raise you up above the impossible. Sometimes he'll allow things to die. Sometimes he'll allow some relationships to die. Sometimes he'll allow some deals to die. Sometimes he'll allow some careers to die. He allows it to die so that you can experience life all over again. Then he says, and he that was dead came forth bound hand and foot with grave clothes. And his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. Understand, the impossible has to let you go. Understand, Jesus says, whatever you are going through, whatever everyone has deemed to be impossible, what everyone has deemed this has never happened before, What everyone has says, listen, you can't overcome this. Whatever condition that they have deemed you to have that they say is irreversible, you need to understand that Jesus says, with man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Understand, when you're in covenant with God, listen, his delay doesn't mean that you have been forgotten. Sometimes he just delays because he wants to make sure that the situation that you are in, listen, that it has died, and there will be no outside forces that can come and assist you in any way. And sometimes he wants to make sure when he shows up, all those that are around you, they can come together on one accord and they can agree that your situation or your condition is dead, it's irreversible, and it's impossible. And then that's when he shows up. And then when he shows up in this story, as he's conversating with Lazarus' sister, all she is talking about, listen, she's talking about a past. She's talking about something that is dead. She's talking about something that was. And all this Jesus is talking about, where is the possible at? I just need to get to the possible. Because if I get to the impossible, I'm going to show you that there's nothing impossible with me. And then whatever your situation may be in, all you need is just a word from the Lord. We're so excited you guys tuned in to be with us this morning or this afternoon for the beginning of this new series, The Impossible Possible. And I want you to know, my brother, my sister, whatever you may be experiencing right now at this present time, regardless of how hard it may be, regardless of how long you may have been struggling in your situation, it may seem like you're not making any headway. It may seem like every time you take one step forward, you're getting pushed back. It seems like your situation, your dream does not have any life. But I want you to know, I'm so glad that you tuned in to be with us, because the impossible is possible with God. And he's already declared, listen, that your latter shall be greater than your beginning. So you need to understand, wherever you are right now, whatever the situation may be trying to announce over your life, regardless of whatever the devil might be trying to say, regardless of whatever man or woman might be trying to say, regardless of that benediction that they're trying to announce over your life, listen, don't be saddened by it, because that benediction is confirming you do have a future. I look forward to being with you guys again on Sunday morning as we're preparing to close out this series that we have been in, entitled simply Shelter for All Seasons. I love you guys. Be blessed now, and I'll see you guys real soon.